There are moments in history when the human gaze turned not outward, but inward, when civilizations built not merely empires of stone, but architectures of meaning. Ancient Egypt stands as one of those luminous thresholds where spirit and matter intertwined so seamlessly that the boundaries between them dissolved. To most, the relics that remain, pyramids piercing the horizon, hieroglyphs carved into the bones of eternity, are monuments of an ancient world long gone. Yet beneath their visible grandeur lies a secret far subtler, a living understanding that reality, as we perceive it, is not the final layer of existence, but a veil woven of consciousness itself. The Egyptians did not simply build to last, they built to remind. Their temples and tombs were reflections of an invisible order, models of a cosmic truth that whispered, "What you call real is but the shadow of something more vast and eternal." To step into their worldview is to step into a mirror. Every symbol, every ritual, every myth was a strand of a greater revelation, that the physical world was not ultimate reality, but an echo shaped by the mind's perception. In their sacred cosmology, existence unfolded as a divine dream emanating from the source, which they named Atum, Ra, or sometimes the ineffable Netter, the one who became the many. The physical realm was merely a projection of divine thought, a stage upon which souls danced to rediscover their origin. This was not metaphor to them, it was science of a higher order, the metaphysics of being clothed in poetry. They understood that to awaken from the illusion of separation was the highest act of wisdom, the very purpose of life. The illusion they sought to pierce was not one of deception, but of limitation. The senses were not enemies of truth, yet neither were they its masters. The Egyptians saw that human perception was like a lens, a sacred instrument capable of distortion or revelation depending on its clarity. When unrefined by awareness, the mind confuses the reflection for the source, believing that form alone constitutes reality. But when purified through understanding, perception becomes a doorway into the hidden essence behind all form. Thus, reality was not a static thing, but a living field of consciousness shaped by thought, belief, and intention. The real was fluid, responsive, participatory. To them, to know was to create, and to see clearly was to awaken the world itself from its dreamlike state. They encoded this philosophy not in arguments but in living symbols. Consider the scarab, rolling its sphere of earth like the rising sun. It was not merely an insect but a hieroglyph of rebirth, of the eternal cycle through which illusion renews itself until the soul awakens to its center. The Eye of Horus was not simply an emblem of protection but a reminder that perception itself holds the power to heal or deceive. Even the grand architecture of the pyramids was a diagram of transcendence, a geometric ladder through which the spirit could ascend beyond appearances into the unchanging source of light. Every temple was a map of consciousness, every ceremony a rehearsal of awakening, every god a facet of the same invisible unity reflected through different lenses of experience. In this worldview, what we call reality was more akin to a mirage shimmering upon the surface of the infinite. Like the desert heat conjuring phantom waters, the world of form appeared solid yet dissolved upon deeper inspection. This recognition was not meant to breed despair, but liberation. If reality was illusion, it meant it was also malleable. If existence was dreamlike, then within that dream one could awaken, reshape, and ascend. The Egyptians were not nihilists, they were dreamers who remembered that dreams could become divine laboratories. They trained the mind to see through the mirage without dismissing its beauty, to walk within illusion while remaining anchored in the eternal. To the modern observer, such an understanding may seem mystical, yet it resonates eerily with discoveries at the frontiers of our own physics and psychology. Quantum fields that shimmer with uncertainty, the realization that observation shapes outcomes, the recognition that mind and matter are not separate entities, all echo what the ancients already embodied in their temples. They did not require equations to understand that consciousness precedes form. Their rituals, chants, and sacred measurements were ways of aligning human awareness with the architecture of the unseen. Their priests were both scientists and poets of reality, decoding the divine mathematics hidden behind appearance. To truly comprehend their wisdom is not to gather historical facts, but to enter their mode of seeing. It is to understand that what we call the world is a projection, a vast hieroglyph written by consciousness itself. Every life, every moment, every relationship is a symbol reflecting back to the observer the contents of their own awareness. The Egyptians lived this truth with exquisite artistry. They painted the afterlife not as a fantasy of death, but as a metaphor for awakening, the soul journeying through the illusions of form toward the eternal light of remembrance. In their cosmology, the afterlife was not somewhere else, but a deeper layer of the same reality we inhabit, accessible through perception refined by wisdom. The question that pulses beneath their symbols is one that still haunts humanity: what is truly real? Is reality an objective landscape, indifferent and external, or is it an ever-shifting mirror of consciousness, a divine illusion designed to awaken us? The ancient Egyptians answered not with doctrine but with living art. Their civilization was a canvas upon which they painted the invisible laws of being. They invited the initiate to look beyond the horizon of form, to recognize that every shape and shadow is a reflection of a greater unity. The world was not to be escaped, but understood. Illusion was not a trap, but a teacher. Thus, when we gaze upon the golden mask of Tutankhamun, the columns of Karnak, or the silent faces of the Sphinx, we are not merely witnessing remnants of a vanished world, we are looking at mirrors designed to awaken memory. They remind us that reality, like the Nile, flows between two shores, the seen and the unseen, the finite and the infinite. The Egyptians stood upon the threshold and declared that both are one. The illusion of separation, they taught, is the final veil, and behind it lies the eternal. To understand the Egyptian vision that reality is an illusion, one must first dissolve the idea that illusion means falsehood. In their language, illusion was not deception, it was Maya, the sacred dance of appearances, a necessary veil that allowed the infinite to express itself through finite form. The Egyptians did not deny the world's existence, they revealed that its solidity was a kind of spell cast by perception, a divine mirroring through which consciousness experiences itself. They believed the world was alive with symbols, that every event and object was a hieroglyph written by the universe to remind the soul of its origin. To them, knowledge was not merely acquired, it was remembered, as if each human being carried within them a seed of divine awareness waiting to awaken. At the foundation of this philosophy lay the principle of Atum, the self-created source from which all things emerged. Atum was the primordial unity that became two, the invisible that took on form to know itself through contrast. The ancient texts describe how Atum, in an act of cosmic breath, brought forth the first dualities, light and darkness, order and chaos, seen and unseen. Yet these were never opposites in conflict, they were reflections, two hands of the same creator. Reality, therefore, was not divided but cyclical, its seeming polarities only the rhythmic motion of one eternal consciousness. The Egyptians called this great rhythm Ma'at, the law of balance, harmony, and truth that governed all existence. Ma'at was not a moral code alone, it was the geometry of the cosmos itself, the pattern that allowed illusion to remain meaningful rather than chaotic. In the Hall of Ma'at, it was said that every soul would have its heart weighed against the feather of truth. To the uninitiated, this appeared to be a judgment of sin, but the esoteric interpretation went deeper, it symbolized the weighing of perception against reality. If one's heart was heavy with attachment to illusion, with fear, greed, or false identity, it could not ascend. But if the heart was light, free from identification with form, it merged once again with the eternal. The weighing was not punishment, it was purification, the rebalancing of consciousness from distortion back to truth. In this sacred imagery, the Egyptians embedded a universal principle: liberation arises when one realizes that form, identity, and possession are but masks upon the face of the infinite. Another cornerstone of their understanding was the concept of the Ka, Ba, and Ak, three aspects of the soul representing different layers of being. The Ka was the vital essence, the energetic double that maintained life. The Ba was the personality, the bird-like soul that could travel between realms, and the Ak was the immortal light body, the radiant consciousness that transcended both life and death. Together they formed a map of awareness. The physical world, they believed, was the domain where the Ka and Ba played within illusion, learning through experience to remember the eternal Ak within. This triadic vision mirrored the structure of reality itself, body, mind, and spirit as echoes of a single cosmic trinity. It was through the harmonization of these parts that one awakened from illusion and remembered their divine origin. The priests and initiates of Egypt understood this not as abstract philosophy but as practice. The rituals performed in temples were not empty gestures, they were technologies of consciousness, ways to synchronize human awareness with the underlying pattern of the universe. Sound, color, geometry, and proportion were used to shape the field of perception. The resonant frequencies of chants aligned the body's vibration with the cosmic rhythm. The architecture of temples mirrored celestial alignments, transforming space into a gateway between worlds. Through repetition and precision, the illusion of separateness began to thin, revealing the living intelligence that animated all forms. To enter a temple was to step into a physical embodiment of metaphysics, each column, inscription, and chamber calibrated to awaken specific aspects of the soul's remembrance. Underlying these practices was the principle that consciousness creates form. The Egyptians expressed this through the myth of Ta, the god who conceived the world through thought and brought it into existence through speech. What the heart thinks, the tongue commands, declared the ancient texts, suggesting that the act of creation begins within. Reality, then, was not a fixed external construct but a responsive field molded by awareness. To the trained initiate, this meant that the illusion could be consciously shaped, that through the mastery of thought and word, one could harmonize with the divine pattern and alter the quality of experience. In this sense, their spirituality was profoundly practical. It offered a method for transforming perception, for awakening within the dream rather than escaping it. This understanding gave rise to a sacred paradox: reality was both dream and law. It was mutable, yet ordered, illusory, yet consistent. The Egyptians did not see contradiction in this, they saw mystery. Just as the reflection of the sun dances on the Nile's surface, shimmering yet precise, so too does the world shimmer with both truth and illusion. To live wisely was to navigate this dance, honoring the play of appearances without mistaking them for the whole. This balance between reverence and awareness was the heart of Egyptian wisdom. Their texts, such as the Book of the Dead and the Emerald Tablets, spoke in riddles precisely because they aimed to bypass literal understanding. The words were designed as mirrors, inviting the reader to awaken insight through contemplation. The dead in the Book of the Dead were not corpses but those asleep in illusion, the ones who have forgotten that life itself is a dream. To read the text as instruction for death was to miss its deeper message. It was a manual for awakening to eternal consciousness within the illusion of form. Every gate, every trial, every deity encountered on the journey through the underworld represented a psychological threshold within the self. The afterlife was an allegory for the transformation of perception, the passage from the illusion of separation to the realization of unity. What made Egyptian knowledge enduring was its refusal to divide science, spirituality, and art. To them, these were one and the same pursuit, the study of reality's hidden structure. The astronomer charting the stars, the scribe composing hymns, and the priest performing ritual were all engaged in the same work, revealing the illusion and uncovering the divine architecture beneath it. They saw the cosmos as a living organism in which every part reflected the whole, and humanity as its conscious mirror. To know oneself was to know the universe, for the same patterns pulsed in both. When we contemplate their philosophy today, we are not merely studying an ancient culture, we are remembering something timeless. The illusion of reality has not changed, only the language through which we describe it has. The Egyptians understood that awakening was not about abandoning the world but perceiving it rightly. Reality, they taught, is a mirror in motion, and truth is not hidden behind it but shining through it, waiting for eyes clear enough to see. In the heart of Egyptian thought, truth was never conveyed through doctrine but through story, through sacred theater enacted in myth and symbol. Each myth was a mirror, reflecting not history but the architecture of consciousness itself. To understand their vision that reality is an illusion, one must enter these narratives not as literal tales but as living diagrams of awakening, dreams within the dream that reveal the dreamer. Among these, none is more profound than the story of Osiris, Isis, and Horus, a cosmic drama that unfolds simultaneously in heaven, earth, and the human soul. Osiris, the just and luminous king, represents the eternal essence, the undying spirit that holds creation in order. His brother, Set, the god of chaos and desert storms, is the shadow, the part of consciousness that forgets its divine source and seeks to dominate form. When Set deceives and dismembers Osiris, scattering his body across the Nile, the world falls into illusion, order is fragmented, and truth is veiled beneath multiplicity. Yet Isis, the devoted consort and embodiment of divine intuition, searches tirelessly for the scattered pieces. Through love, wisdom, and patience, she gathers them one by one, restoring Osiris to wholeness, not in body, but in spirit. From their union arises Horus, the falcon-eyed child of resurrection, who opens the sky and restores balance. To the initiate, this was not simply the story of gods but the allegory of the soul. Osiris is the higher self, Set the ego that believes in separation, Isis the intuitive faculty that perceives beyond illusion, and Horus the awakened consciousness that sees with the eye of the sun. The dismemberment of Osiris mirrors the soul's descent into matter, consciousness scattered among the countless experiences of physical existence. The search of Isis is the inner journey of remembrance, the gathering of wisdom through which the illusion is transcended. When Horus is born, it is the moment of awakening, when the individual self realizes its unity with the eternal. The Egyptians expressed this realization in the phrase, "I am Osiris risen," a declaration that the soul has awakened from the illusion of death and separation to the truth of eternal being. The myth of the weighing of the heart also hides within it a key to understanding reality's illusion. In that sacred chamber, the heart of the deceased is placed upon a scale, balanced against the feather of Ma'at. The heart here is not an organ but a symbol of perception, the lens through which reality is experienced. A heavy heart, burdened by attachment to illusion, cannot ascend, for it clings to forms and fears. But a light heart, unclouded by self-deception, floats effortlessly, merging with truth. This allegory reveals that liberation is not a journey through space or time, but a shift of awareness. When the heart becomes transparent, reality itself becomes luminous, and the illusion dissolves into pure being. Another powerful symbol was Ra, the sun god who journeys each night through the underworld. As Ra descends into the darkness of the Duat, he battles serpents of chaos, passes through gates guarded by fiery entities, and confronts his own shadow. Yet each dawn, he is reborn, rising anew upon the horizon. To the Egyptians, this was not simply the motion of the physical sun but a reflection of the soul's own cycle of awakening. Each human being, they believed, was a sun in miniature, continually descending into the illusions of sleep and rising again through the power of remembrance. Night and day were metaphors for the oscillation between ignorance and enlightenment. The true initiate was one who could travel through the night consciously, illuminating the shadows of illusion from within. In their temples, this myth was enacted daily through ceremony. The priests of Ra would awaken before dawn, entering chambers aligned precisely to the rising sun. They chanted hymns that mirrored the sun's journey through the underworld, symbolically accompanying Ra in his battle against darkness. When the first light entered the sanctum, it struck the statue of the god, igniting the space with golden brilliance, a living representation of consciousness-piercing illusion. To witness this was to experience revelation, not as belief but as direct vision. The boundary between symbol and reality dissolved, the ritual became the event, the myth became the mirror. Even the ink, that looped cross carried by gods and pharaohs, held within it the secret geometry of illusion and awakening. The circle represented the eternal, unmanifest source, the pure consciousness before creation. The vertical line symbolized descent into matter, while the horizontal bar signified the field of duality, where opposites appear. The meeting point, the cross itself, marked the intersection of time and eternity, where the illusion of separateness can be transcended. To hold the ink was to remember one's divine origin while standing within the world of form, to live in the dream without being deceived by it. The temples themselves were vast symbolic narratives carved in stone. Walking through them was like journeying through layers of consciousness. The outer courtyards represented the material world, the inner halls mirrored the mind, and the hidden sanctuary, the Holy of Holies, symbolized the realm of pure spirit, where illusion dissolves entirely. Each step inward was a step deeper into the real. The initiate who entered such a temple underwent not a mere ritual but a reprogramming of perception. When they emerged, they did not see a new world, they saw the same world anew, radiant with meaning, alive with intelligence. The Egyptians also told of the field of reeds, their vision of paradise. Yet even this was not a distant heaven but a metaphor for a state of consciousness. It was said to be a mirror image of Egypt itself, perfect and luminous, where all things existed in harmony. This mirrored world was not elsewhere, it was the true form of the illusion, visible only to those who had awakened within it. Thus, the afterlife was not an escape but a revelation, the world of illusion transformed into paradise through the clarity of perception. The field of reeds was not reached by death but by insight. At the heart of all these symbols lies a single revelation, that the outer and inner worlds are reflections of one another. The gods, the myths, the temples, these were never external realities to the Egyptian sage. They were projections of consciousness, embodiments of inner states. The illusion of reality is not a prison, but a teaching device. Each challenge, each joy, each shadow invites recognition of the divine pattern behind it. Just as Isis gathered the fragments of Osiris, so must each soul gather the fragments of awareness scattered across the experiences of life. Only then can the illusion be transmuted into wisdom, and the dreamer awaken to the truth that they were never separate from the source. In this sense, Egyptian knowledge was not meant to erase illusion but to sanctify it, to transform it from a veil into a window. They understood that to awaken is not to destroy the dream, but to realize that you are dreaming, and in that realization, to consciously create with love, harmony, and purpose. The entire civilization, in its art, architecture, and myth, was an ongoing initiation, a message across millennia whispering, "The world you see is the shadow of your own light. Learn to see through it, and you shall behold eternity." To speak of ancient Egyptian wisdom as something distant is to miss its most essential teaching. The illusion of time is, after all, part of the greater illusion they sought to unveil. The truths they carried are not relics entombed with pharaohs but living instructions for consciousness, applicable now, perhaps more urgently than ever. What they knew of perception, of mind, of the invisible patterns shaping our experience, still hums beneath the surface of our modern existence. Their temples have become our cities, their rituals, our daily habits. The stage has changed, yet the dream remains. What the Egyptians sought through ceremony and initiation, we seek today through science, meditation, and the quiet ache for meaning that lingers in every soul. To integrate their vision is not to imitate their forms, but to awaken their essence within ourselves. The first act of integration begins with awareness, the art of seeing through. The Egyptians trained initiates to observe reality without becoming ensnared by its surface. They understood that the senses, though exquisite, present a filtered version of truth, shaped by belief and habit. We, too, live within this enchantment. Our screens, our news, our identities, these are our modern hieroglyphs, symbols that we mistake for the real. Yet when we pause, when we watch the mind weave its narrative, a subtle shift occurs. We begin to sense that perception is not passive but creative, that every thought is a brushstroke upon the canvas of experience. The ancient priests might have said that we are all builders of invisible pyramids, stacking moments, meanings, and memories into the structure we call the world. To see this clearly is the beginning of freedom. The Egyptians used ritual to harmonize with cosmic law. For us, ritual may take quieter forms, a daily meditation, a moment of gratitude before sleep, a conscious breath before reacting. The principle is the same, aligning the inner with the outer so that illusion becomes transparent. The sacred chants that once echoed through the hypostyle halls of Karnak were not meant merely to praise gods but to tune the human vessel. Sound alters vibration, vibration alters perception. In our time, the equivalent might be mindfulness of speech, the realization that words shape reality just as surely as Ta's divine utterances gave birth to the world. Every statement we make is a spell, every intention a ripple through the field of consciousness. When we speak with awareness, we participate consciously in creation, transforming illusion into artistry. The law of Ma'at, which once governed pharaohs and peasants alike, offers a practical compass for modern life. Ma'at is not confined to moral virtue, it is the balance between inner and outer worlds, between form and essence. To live in Ma'at is to act from alignment rather than reaction, to recognize that harmony within produces harmony without. When imbalance arises, whether as conflict, confusion, or despair, it signals not a flaw in the world but a distortion in perception. The correction, then, is not control but clarity. The Egyptians understood this as maintaining the straightness of the heart, the ability to remain centered amid illusion. In our lives, this might mean stepping back from chaos, remembering that every storm of circumstance is a reflection of the winds of thought. When we realign with truth, the external world begins to mirror that peace. One of the most transformative implications of Egyptian philosophy lies in the relationship between death and awakening. They viewed death not as an ending but as the lifting of a veil, an unveiling of what was always present. The rituals of embalming and mummification were symbolic rehearsals for this revelation, acts meant to remind the living that form is temporary, but essence endures. To live with that understanding is to free oneself from fear. We need not wait for death to experience this. Every ending, every loss, every letting go is a small initiation into eternity. When we release our attachment to the transient, the illusion begins to soften. What remains is not emptiness but radiance, the recognition that what we truly are has never been born and can never die. Even the material achievements of Egypt offer guidance for integration. The pyramids, with their perfect alignment to the stars, were embodiments of the harmony between heaven and earth. Their shape, ascending from square base to radiant apex, mirrors the ascent of consciousness from the four directions of material experience toward the unity of the divine. We may not build such monuments in stone, but we build them daily in thought. Every act of integrity, every moment of clarity, every expression of compassion is a block placed upon the pyramid of the soul. In this way, the ancient architecture becomes internalized, the outer pyramid rises from limestone, the inner from awareness. Their understanding of illusion also challenges our modern assumption that the world is purely external. In an age dominated by sensory data and digital reflections, their wisdom becomes a mirror held to our collective mind. The Egyptians might remind us that what we scroll through on screens is as much illusion as the desert mirage, yet both serve a purpose. the illusion teaches through reflection. Every emotion evoked by the outer world is an opportunity to recognize the inner landscape that gives it meaning. The one who knows this walks through the world as through a temple, seeing symbols where others see noise, finding initiation where others find distraction. The principle of Heka, often mistranslated as magic, provides another key. To the Egyptians, Heka was not sorcery but the creative force of consciousness itself, the divine word that sustains existence. Every human being, they believed, possesses Heka. It is the power of attention, intention, and imagination combined. In practical terms, this means that whatever we focus upon, we enliven. To dwell on fear strengthens illusion, to dwell on truth dissolves it. Heka invites us to become conscious artists of perception, transforming our experience not by resisting the illusion but by reshaping it from within. It teaches that mastery of reality begins with mastery of mind. When integrated, these ancient insights invite a new way of living, one in which illusion becomes instrument rather than obstacle. We can walk through the shimmering surfaces of life with eyes that see both form and essence, playing our part in the divine dream with grace. The world does not need to be denied to be transcended, it needs to be understood. Every relationship, every challenge, every moment of beauty or pain is a reflection of consciousness unfolding itself. When we meet life this way, the ordinary becomes sacred, and the illusion becomes transparent to the eternal. Thus, to live the Egyptian wisdom today is to practice remembrance. It is to awaken each morning as Ra rising from the underworld, to see through the eyes of Horus that pierce illusion, to weigh the heart daily against the feather of truth, ensuring that no deceit of ego weighs it down. It is to understand that heaven and earth are not distant realms but simultaneous dimensions of the same infinite consciousness. The dream does not bind us, it invites us to awaken within it and co-create with awareness. In the end, every mystery of Egypt leads back to a single realization: the dream and the dreamer are one. The gods they sculpted in gold and lapis, the temples they raised to the heavens, the rituals performed by torchlight, all were mirrors designed to turn the seeker inward. Their wisdom was not about worshipping external powers, but about remembering the source within. Every image of Ra, Osiris, or Isis was a symbol of your own consciousness at different stages of awakening. The drama of the gods was the drama of your own soul, its descent into form, its struggle through illusion, and its triumphant return to the light. The Egyptians spoke often of the Ka and Ba, two aspects of the self that reveal the secret of existence. The Ka was the vital essence, the invisible double that animated the body, while the Ba was the soul's bird, the part that could fly freely between worlds. Together they symbolize the interplay of matter and spirit, the dance of illusion and truth. When they united in perfect harmony, they formed the Ak, the luminous being, the one who has awakened. To become an Ak was the ultimate goal of initiation, to see that the self is not confined to form, but is the light animating all forms. In that moment, the illusion dissolves, and the dreamer awakens within the dream. What does this awakening look like in modern terms? It is not a withdrawal from the world, nor a cold transcendence beyond emotion. Rather, it is a profound intimacy with life, an ability to see beauty in the transient and peace in the uncertain. When you realize that all forms are temporary expressions of eternal essence, you stop grasping. You move through the world as through a living painting, aware that every brushstroke, no matter how chaotic, serves the greater composition. You speak, act, love, and create not from fear, but from presence. This is what it means to walk in Ma'at. It is not perfection, it is participation in harmony. The Egyptian initiates often described enlightenment not as gaining knowledge but as remembering. The word they used for the enlightened one, Sahu, literally meant the one who has recalled his true form. The process of remembering was symbolized by the reassembly of Osiris, whose body was scattered across the land. Each fragment represented a forgotten aspect of the self, a belief, a fear, a desire, and Isis, the power of love and intuition, gathered them back together. When all parts were reunited, Osiris rose, radiant and whole. That myth is not history, it is psychology. Every one of us is Osiris, fragmented by the illusions of time and identity, and every one of us carries within the compassionate wisdom of Isis, the power to remember, to make whole again what was divided. Once the illusion is understood, it no longer imprisons. You may still feel pain, loss, or uncertainty, but you will know these as passing clouds across the unchanging sky of awareness. The heart of Egyptian wisdom is not the denial of illusion, but its redemption. The world, seen through awakened eyes, becomes a sacred text written in the language of symbols. The sun is not just a star, but a reminder of your own radiance. The Nile is not merely a river, but the flow of consciousness through the cycles of becoming. Every dawn is resurrection, every dusk a descent into the underworld, and every night, in the silence of sleep, the soul rehearses its journey through eternity. To live with this understanding is to embody the middle way of the ancient sages, neither clinging to form nor fleeing from it. The Egyptians would say, "Walk between the two lands." The two lands were Upper and Lower Egypt, but symbolically they represented the realms of matter and spirit. To walk between them was to hold both as sacred, to be both human and divine. This is the essence of balance, the true meaning of Ma'at. When the initiate achieved this, he or she was called Ntrn-Jed, the pillar of the god, a living axis between heaven and earth. To reach this state was not to escape illusion but to shine through it. And so, the teaching circles back to where it began. The world is illusion, but the illusion is real, as long as you believe in separation. The Egyptians never meant illusion to be dismissed, they meant for it to be understood. For illusion, too, is the language through which truth speaks. It is the veil that reveals, the shadow that gives shape to the light. In the temple walls, this paradox was carved in stone, the divine eye gazing upon itself through countless forms, forever awakening to its own reflection. If you listen closely, not with the mind, but with the heart, you may hear that same whisper now. It comes not from the past, but from the depth of your own awareness, saying, "You are the light that casts the illusion. You are the dreamer and the dreamed. You are the eternal one who plays among forms to know itself as infinite." The pyramids, the gods, the stars, they are your own thoughts, made visible in time. To awaken is not to reject them, but to see them as they are, reflections of the one consciousness that animates all. So remember, as the ancients did, the veil of illusion is not a barrier to be torn down, it is a sacred mirror to be understood. The moment you look upon it with clear sight, it becomes transparent. And through it, the Eternal gazes back at you, smiling, as if to say, "You were never asleep at all."